What's up, guys? Shay Stevens here, PDGA number 77522, and today we're talking about the time lapse. Let's get to it. Alright, guys, I just want to apologize in advance before we get started. If there's any rough cuts in this video, I'm a little bit under the weather. It's the start of the school year, and everybody gets sick, myself included. So yeah, if I have any rough cuts in this video, it's probably because I had to, edit around a cough or a sneeze. Already starting, but onto the topic at hand, which is dominating pretty much all the debate and discussion groups, as well as the marketplaces, the Simon Line time lapse. We were first introduced to this disc on August 21st with the announcement from the PDGA that was an approved disc. And unfortunately, right off the bat, we had a problem. We had an image included in that announcement that should not have been there. So yeah, we knew it was an Axiom disc, but we weren't supposed to know that it was the first disc in the Simon line. Luckily, PDGA pulled that image really quickly of the tooling, but people still got screenshots. Obviously, that's how I got that one. And I got to give credit to everybody who got that screenshot. Nobody blasted it out publicly, which is very impressive. I thought it was going to be all over Reddit and Discord, but people respected Simon and MVP enough not to share it out there and ruin the surprise, steal the thunder. So, hats off. I'm in this day and age with leaks everywhere. I was very impressed that that one did not get out, but still, it probably put the fear in MVP that someone almost stole their thunder, and probably gave them some concern of wanting to get this news out sooner rather than later. And this also presented. There's another problem too, is that Simon loved the disc and immediately bagged it, so he was throwing it at Worlds, so people were going to see it. And if you made a gatekeeper card or something, it was going to be listed as pre-round in the bag, and you can't have that be the disc announcement. So MVP came out on August 30th and announced the Simon line. It was a really great video talking about how Simon's had cameras involved in his life, and that became the inspiration for the theme of the line. But what good is a disc announcement without discs? So MVP had to make the announcement, but they didn't have a production run to go with it. I guarantee you those machines are running 24/7 right now, cranking out time lapses, probably well over 100K, to make sure that everybody gets one, because it's going to be a very sought after disc. But realistically, or I'll say optimistically, we won't see that run done until probably late October. More realistically, November is when we'll see it. So to have an announcement 2 months before the actual release of the product really stinks. You lose the momentum. It kind of, people might even be upset. Like, why bother announcing it if you don't have the product? So I think MVP was forced to call an audible, and somebody looked over at that shelf and saw the prototype sitting there and said, hey, at least we can do something for the fans. And to understand, I know a lot of people are upset about the limit of, or the scarcity of the prototypes. I think you need to understand how the prototyping process works. So in disc golf, the term prototype is a bit of a misnomer. The discs are not prototypes. They are the prototype run that is made by the prototype, the mold. So in disc golf, you want to make a disc that's 12 speed, -1 turn, 3 fade, some shoulder and dome on it, because that's what Simon wants. So you go and make your mold. Traditionally, the mold's 2 halves, top and bottom. I don't know how MVP does their overmolding. It's proprietary knowledge. I believe they do their cores separately from the rim or from the overmold. But just keep it simple. Solo molds, top and bottom. You sculpt it how you want it, put it together, and then you'll do a prototype run of probably 100 to 200 discs, and see, did it produce the results you wanted? Odds are on that first shot, probably not. So you'll look at what it made. You'll go back to the mold, make some tweaks, and you'll do it again, and you'll repeat that process as needed. And the goal is to obviously get the product you want, but also get it consistent at that lower threshold of 200. Because let's say you make 200 discs and 20 of them are duds. The dome falls in, the wing pops up, whatever. You can't take that to production. If you're going to make 100,000 discs, that's 20,000 duds you're making. You're wasting production time. You're wasting material. It's not good business practice. So you want to work at a lower scale first of 200 and find out, maybe 1% is your acceptable, variance or, threshold for failures. I'm curious what MVP's thresholds are, because they're kind of mad scientists, but you'll work through that 1 to 200 prototyping stage, and once you get what you want, you move up to 1,000, and you run it again and say, hey, do you stay within the acceptable margins for error? And if at any point something crazy happens, you got to go back to stage 1, that 100 to 200 run, and again, keep pushing through. So you go to 1,000. If you pass the 1,000 mark, you go to 5,000, And honestly, even in these stages, you might run it multiple times at 1,000, multiple times at 500 or at 5,000 to test for different kind of variables. You know, the temperature in the room, different degrees of humidity. I do know MVP has the benefit of having a climate controlled warehouse, so that helps them regulate those variables a bit. But eventually, I believe a good standard for prototyping is 10% of expectation. So if you expect this mold to do 100,000 units in a run, your last prototyping stage is going to be 10,000 prototype run. So you're going to make 10,000 of these units, and again, testing for variance, making sure everything's acceptable. And again, you're probably going to want to do it a couple times, and MVP is probably going to be even more meticulous with it, just because it's Simon, it's their first 12 speed, and let's not beat around the bush. It's going to be the Destroyer Challenger from MVP. The Destroyer is the king of 12 speeds. It's stood the test of time. It's been around for so long. You only get one shot to dethrone the king. The only disc that ever came close to it, I believe, was the Dynamic Disc Raider. That first one was incredible. It was domey. It was a bomber. Everyone was saying, hey, this one's got a chance. And then that second run, holy cow, did it flop. They were flat. They were so stupid overstable, and all the momentum for it just kind of faded away. So you need to make sure that your product is consistent and you put out something that's going to be able to challenge the Destroyer, because it's going to take a lot of time to wean people off of that disc they've trusted for decades, or to challenge that disc with such a great reputation. So I wouldn't be surprised if MVP put a little more extra time on this prototype. In terms of how many prototypes they have, it's interesting to figure out. That's right, I need to get a throat drop. So you have this prototype mold making prototype discs. And once it makes those discs, they don't just get thrown in a box and sit on a shelf forever. They get used and abused. They get put through the ringer for quality and assurance, because you want to make sure you're making a good product with integrity. So guarantee you they sent a bunch to Simon throughout the year to get his input on how to tweak the mold. Likewise, they got people at MVP HQ. I'm sure Andrew's a 940 rated player, so he's got some credentials. They had these people throw the disc and again get feedback, throw it into walls, make sure the disc doesn't explode, that it can handle a high-speed collision. They probably cut them up to make sure, the flight plate and the core bonded together, or the flight plate and the rim bonded together properly. So these things are getting used. So just because they've made, probably over 100,000 discs during this whole process, they don't have all those 100,000. So they've been used. And likewise, when you make a mold, make a run, and then you go back and tweak the mold, traditionally you just destroy them because they're the product was it's obsolete, or it's a deficient in whatever manner. You might keep a few for reference for the just the prototyping process of where you came from, but for the most part those discs just get ground up into R2, which is MVP's recycled blend, which is a nice feature because now MVP can prototype more extensively and not lose so much money because they can recover it, or at least cut the losses by making that putting that material into R2 and being able to sell those discs at least. So again, you'll make your mold, you keep tweaking it, and eventually you'll come to that final run where the mold, it's final iteration. So it makes the 100 to 200 run, everything's cool. Does the 1,000 run, everything's cool. 5,000 run, everything's cool. 10,000 run, everything's cool. And again, they might be doing it multiple times at each stage just to make sure everything's good. So, but again, during those stages, you are using those discs, putting them through the ringer, beating them up to make sure the product's good. So, if I was going to estimate it, normally it's like 8 to 15,000 prototypes. There might be more up there. It might be in the 20,000, but this isn't a massive run by today's standards. I mean, runs are usually like 70,000 minimum for what we're seeing in this market. So, this is going to be a smaller run of discs, which means it's going to be scarce. So, how does MVP get these discs out to the community? As if this video didn't have enough cut-ins. Sorry guys, Future Shay here, coming in because I forgot to answer the question I saw a lot. Why didn't MVP just make more prototypes? That's not how prototyping works. The goal is to get through prototyping with as few prototypes as possible to get you to production so you can start making money on the mold you spent tens of thousands of dollars making, in addition to all the materials you spent testing the mold to make sure it was making the product you want. So you don't want to just keep making prototypes all willy-nilly. You want to keep that as low as possible to satisfy your standards. Also, when you make a prototype run, so you run the disc through, they're on the table cooling, the machine just isn't over here chilling. I guarantee you, as soon as it was done that run, they pulled up the time lapse and they threw the hex mold in or something to make some hexes, because MVP still has demand to keep up with. The wholesale forms are not where they want them to be. The custom order forms are pretty scarce. You hear a lot of the artists complaining. It's slim pickings for what you can get custom stamps on. So MVP can't afford to have a machine just sitting there idle. So it wasn't like the machine's just sitting there with the time lapse mold waiting for the okay to make more. As soon as it ran that final run, it probably came out of the machine. They threw a new one in, and then they evaluated that final run to go, yep, we're good to go. We're going to go into production. But then they had to wait for a machine to open up. So it wasn't like a, just keep going deal. Likewise, if they were to hold that run and okay, we're gonna do the production run and just mix it all together, we'll lie and say it's a prototype. It still doesn't solve the issue of releasing in time. You would have to make all these discs, so you would have had the announcement on August 30th, and you wouldn't have had any discs. So you've had, we'll say, super optimistically, 20,000 prototypes. You still got to make 80,000 more, so you're probably going to be 2 months out of being able to release it, which is our initial problem not solved. So MVP's first option for distribution was the MVP Pro Shop, which is their website. Their site, though, is set up very differently compared to other manufacturers' retail sites. On those sites, you'll see the manufacturer's full product line available to buy, and you'll see some amazing discs. Just all color glow, swirls, metal flake, whatever you want. And you talk to your local retailer, and they'll be like, "Yeah, they have all this great stuff on their website." And when we order from them, we get like 2 or 3 of those cool discs out of 100 when we order. So they are in direct competition with retailers, and MVP has always tried to be supportive of its retailers because it gives them a lot of credit for the growth of the brand, just promoting the discs, promoting MVP run events. So the Pro Shop is really, it has 3 purposes. It's a place for the Team MVP members to list their Tour Series discs. Again, that way the Pro isn't having to to handle all the the back and forth PayPal and such and shipping the discs. They can it's an option for them to have MVP handle the sale and distribution of the Tour Series discs. They support their artists, so you have artists who are making stamps for MVP, but starving artists. It's not being an artist is a really hard thing to do, especially in this economy. So MVP tries to give them artist series to run as well that they list on their tour on their Pro Shop, which is pretty much comparable to any other retailer. We have some great ones in the community who do a lot of work with artists, and the Pro Shop is just doing the same thing. And then the last one is oddities. So you have Space Race, Circuit Challenge. You just had a 3-disc challenge wrap up, and MVP will, you go and you get 3 discs, you play around with 3 discs. MVP makes a bunch of them, and at the end of it all, they're going to be left holding them, a few hundred, maybe into the 1,000 mark. You can't really put them on a retailer's order form because, the tempo was kind of the hot disc out of this year's set. Everyone really wants the tempo. Let's say you only have 1,000 tempos left. Maybe 10 places order 100 of them. All the other retailers get upset because they can't get their hands on them. So you have these micro runs of discs or leftovers, and that's where the Pro Shop came in as a way to get those discs out to people, whereas they might have just been ground up. So at least get the discs out rather than losing them. So that's the purpose of the Pro Shop. That being said, because of its structure, this creates a usage problem. Because it's not getting regular site traffic, it might get it's probably only getting into the tens. I seriously doubt it's getting 100 people a day checking out the MVP Pro Shop. Because of that, you can't. There's like a dead zone. You're either a low traffic website or a high traffic website. You can't be a middle traffic. There is no just payment structure for the web services. And also, it really stinks when you're a low traffic website and you suddenly get a lot of traffic, because scaling is a major issue. So as everybody knows, James Conrad releases, we blew up that site. We 504 the heck out of it. And I don't think the MVP Pro Shop, unfortunately, would be able to handle the Simon line discs. We would have, a Simon surge would have just taken that thing down in a heartbeat, even with the new what do they have, Q system in place. The MVP Pro Shop has made great strides in the past 2 years. It's so much better, more functional, but it still has its problems, and unfortunately, it would not be able to handle the Simon surge. So the only option I think MVP had was to get these discs out, was to go through the retailers. All right, so the retailers got their hands on some very valuable discs, and everyone's happy, right? Of course not, because it's scarce product. It's a problem with scarcity is, demand is high, and you got to figure out a way to distribute. And I honestly don't fault any of the retailers for how they distributed the discs. They did what was best for them. Part of the data or part of my guess of 15,000 prototypes on the top end was based on actually the retailers. I looked at the map on UDisc of how many retailers there are in North America and tried to use that to guess how many retailers carry MVP. The wild card is played against sports because that's a franchise that MVP vends to, but not all played against carry disc off. The two near me don't, which stinks. But I came up with 1,000 as a good number, and I figured if there's 1,000 retailers, they could all get 10 each. That meant MVP was willing to give out 10,000 to retailers, and then keep possibly 5,000 in reserve. That's a very top end number. Because they want to keep some for their team members because they might like the prototype run. I know a few of the team really love that prototype run of the Fission Octane. So they keep a bunch on hand just to take care of the team. They want to keep some for giveaways. If you're not already a member of the communities, check out the Discord, the Facebook group. MVP does giveaways pretty often. So you might be able to get your hands on one there. And, it's a good time to hang out there. And lastly, they might drop some into the Gyropalooza boxes. They do a holiday mystery box. They want to have some available to keep them going out, so they want to keep some in reserve. So I thought 10,000 prototypes to the retailers, 1,000, good estimate. But back to the retailer troubles. The retailers who went the charity route and event route, good play. You guys did really well, it looked like. I saw a lot of causes get some good funding, and I saw a lot of B and A tiers get like 1,000 plus added cash really quick. So yeah, growing the sport, just good move there. The retailers who sold their discs really, for a really high price, or who auctioned them off, I can't really fault them, guys. It's a rough economy right now. If you have your hand on the pulse of things, it's a little scary right now. They just put out some numbers on payments and loans for percentages that defaulted, and it's a little bit scary. And at the end of the day, you can't eat plastic, or technically you can. They put it in some of our food, but you can't live on plastic alone, I should say. So. Yeah, a lot of these stores are having trouble. A local one in the area closed recently because couldn't afford the storefront. It just made no sense anymore to keep grinding. So a lot of these places are suffering. So if these discs just help cover the rent for the month or something, I'm not gonna yell at them, especially if people are paying the prices for them. Which brings me to the final gripe of all this. Just all the banter has been stupid. If you want to post your disc picture of your pretty disc, that's cool. Just you should know people are going to hate on it, sour grapes or whatever, they didn't get one. And then I really just hate the people posting like, Mark saved from paying $100 for a Frisbee. What have you just accomplished? Congratulations. Your values are different from somebody else's values. Some people, have the income and really love the sport. They collect things. They want to have that piece of history. That's me. I'm a pretty big collector. I have a nice, wall set up right over here. And maybe they really love Simon. I mean, if you followed my channel, years ago, the former club president for my club told us she had cancer, and we put up a big fundraising effort for her. And my contribution was I reached out to a bunch of touring pros because she had won, she was pretty big in the touring scene as an amateur, and a lot of the pros knew her. So I reached out to a bunch of them to ask for, discs or something to that we could, auction off to help fundraise for her. And, a lot of them were always like, hey, I need like can you give me something kind of like an official write-up from your club document or something just to like verify we're not getting scammed. Or I asked Simon, he responded literally, what's your address? And a lot of pros sent me, a disc or two. Shout out to, Valerie Doss now, but she sent like a beautiful handwritten letter because she knew her. And Simon, not to belittle anybody, but blew everybody out of the water. I got a massive 3 foot by 3 foot box loaded with discs, jerseys, a whole bunch of stuff signed by him, Avery, and Eagle for this cause. No questions asked. So from that moment on, I was a diehard Simon fan. So I really want a time lapse. As you can tell, it's not my thumbnail or anything in this video. I don't have one. Unfortunately, I would love to buy one, get a prototype, but I have a house to take care of. I have bills. I have a car that's giving me trouble. I can't drop that kind of money on a prototype. I'd love to have one, but it doesn't, it's not in the cards for me. But I'm not out there just bashing people saying, "Oh, you're an idiot for paying so much money." Why rain on his parade? What's the point of that? It doesn't make sense to me. So this has been a long, probably convoluted rant, slightly medicine induced. Apologies, guys. But yeah, I've been just seeing all the banter out there, and as an admin and mod, I've been having to deal with some of the stuff on the back end. I've typed out my thoughts a bunch of times and thought, heck, I'll just make a video just kind of talking about everything. And again, final reminder, like I said earlier at some point, the stock run is coming, and it's apparently more user-friendly, so sit tight. Don't feel compelled to buy, one of these discs if you don't really want it for whatever reason. If you don't want to, if you want to be throwing it immediately and you have the money, go for it. Be happy. You do you, but don't feel compelled to buy it. The stock run is on the way, and there will be plenty for everybody. You don't have to worry about scalpers or flippers or whatever you want to call them. So yeah, this has been my little rant about the Simon Line release. I want to thank you guys for all your support. If you have any questions for me, reach out. I'll do my best to answer them. Take care. I'm going to bed. Thank you to my sponsors. For all your disc golf needs, check out Phoenix Discs and Foundation Disc Golf.